Developing this knight toward the center often initiates flexible pawn structures and potential queenside play. Mirroring white's developing knight establishes symmetrical piece activity and signals a flexible intention for the early game. Asserting central influence and preparing an equidistant structure, this pawn push aims to contest the midfield. Opening a diagonal for the bishop, this pawn advances to claim central space and influence. Establishing central presence, this move claims key squares and prepares to open lines for piece activity. Developing the knight to d7 supports the central pawn structure and prepares for king's Indian bishop fianchetto or a knight maneuver to f6, maintaining flexibility. Bolstering the kingside with a fianchetto, preparing a serene castling and potential queenside pressure. Striking at the center immediately, black injects dynamic tension and opens diagonals for the bishops. Developing the bishop to its long diagonal enhances attacking potential and prepares kingside castling, while eyeing the queenside for future maneuvers. Solidifying the central pawn presence and preparing for kingside castling, this piece anchors the developing structure harmoniously. Unleashing the castled king, this maneuver prioritizes paramount safety, readying for a central pawn thrust. Securing the monarch is paramount, a prudent step to shelter the king from any immediate threats developing on the central or kingside files. Developing the knight to c3 solidifies white's central pawn structure and prepares for further queenside expansion, maintaining a flexible setup. Solidifying the center and preparing for future pawn expansion forms the backbone of black's strategy. Solidifying the center and embracing an open game, white boldly claims more territory while preparing for a potential pawn storm. Securing the e5 pawn and preparing to develop the queen's bishop is a solid choice, anticipating white's central push. Preventing bg4, this pawn advance subtly restricts black's piece mobility. Restructuring the defense asterisk, preparing to support the d-pawn's advance and potentially contest the central files. Developing the bishop solidifies the queenside and prepares for potential central pawn expansion, while also offering a safe square should the e-pawn advance. Rerouting the knight to f8 aims to reinforce the d6 pawn and prepare for a potential kingside pawn push. Establishing a clear dominion over the central c-file becomes a priority, potentially preparing for future pawn pushes or piece maneuvers. Prophylactically shoring up the kingside, this move prevents any immediate knight jumps or bishop incursions into the h-pawn's territory. Daringly fracturing the central pawn structure, white seeks to exploit the open lines and create attacking chances on the queenside, even if it temporarily sacrifices some central space. Developing the bishop to d7 strengthens the pawn chain and prepares for a potential central pawn push, anchoring the kingside while looking to contest the d-file. Shifting the knight to d2 prepares a potential kingside pawn storm or supports a central breakthrough, subtly reinforcing the e4 pawn. Pushing the g-pawn initiates a bold kingside pawn storm, aiming to disrupt white's solid center and create attacking chances. Unleashing an aggressive pawn thrust, white seeks to shatter black's kingside pawn chain and exploit the potential king exposure. Unleashing the f-pawn creates immediate chaos, disrupting white's pawn structure and opening lines towards the enemy king. Opening the g-file is aggressive, immediately targeting black's king's safety and creating attacking potential. Relocating the king to g7 might seem passive, but it seeks refuge from the open f-file and prepares a safer coordination of black's pieces. Opening the f-file now grants significant attacking potential against black's weakened king. The black king suddenly looks exposed, inviting aggressive piece play along the newly opened diagonals. Opening a queenside pathway for your rook, this pawn push aims to disrupt black's kingside structure and gain space. Opening the c-file creates a dynamic struggle for central control, demanding careful piece placement. Centralizing that knight unlocks exciting attacking possibilities on the kingside, leveraging the open lines created by the pawn structure. The queen now occupies an active central square, eyeing white's pawn chain and preparing to challenge the open lines. Asserting pressure on the c6 diagonal, this knight prepares for an active role in the ensuing complications. A curious knight sortie, aiming to reshape the central dynamic by challenging the advanced white pawn and potentially creating outpost opportunities. Unleashing the knight to d6 cracks open the queenside pawn structure, creating immediate threats. A developing bishop, but it doesn't quite address the white knight's suffocating presence on d6. Unlocking the kingside pressure, this knight sacrifice forces a critical pawn exchange. Reclaiming a central knight, black seeks to consolidate defensive lines while preparing to challenge the open files. Sacrificing the rook on f6 initiates a powerful kingside attack, aiming to shatter black's pawn shield and expose their monarch. Sacrificing material to seize the initiative, black's king now stands exposed, demanding precise defensive maneuvers. Unleashing pressure on the weakened black king, this queen's sortie probes for immediate weaknesses after the pawn sacrifice. Sacrificing the knight again initiates a desperate attempt to untangle a cramped position, hoping for counterplay on the open diagonal. Unleashing a powerful knight attack, this move exploits the exposed black king and aims to seize the initiative. Preserving the king's safety now becomes paramount, as the open files and advanced white knight create immediate threats. The white queen's descent offers a decisive attack against the vulnerable black monarch. Sensing an opportunity on the queen side, black gambles for piece activity, sacrificing pawn structure for potential counterplay. Asserting control over the open files is paramount now, aiming to exploit the exposed black king. Reclaiming the central file with the rook offers active defense and prepares for counterplay against white's exposed king. Unleashing a powerful discovered attack that severs black's defensive linchpin and forces an immediate, severe material commitment. Abandoning the king's safety for a moment, black chooses to defend a pawn, a potentially dangerous gamble given white's attacking position. Exploiting the open d-file decisively, aiming to dismantle black's beleaguered king. Sacrificing the pawn is a bold gambit, aiming to disrupt white's queen and open lines for counterplay. Clearing the file opens a path for the rook to exploit weak pawns and create pressure. Reclaiming the piece initiates a critical defense, but the exposed king remains a stark weakness. Unleashing a devastating discovered attack, aiming to dismantle black's king's defenses.